the Washington Commanders, that little bro. The Commanders overachieved, right? Overachieved in a major way during year one with Jayden Daniels and the Dan Quinn partnership. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship before the clock struck midnight on their fairy tale story. While that 55-23 loss exposed a Washington defense that was more meh than good throughout the season, there's still little doubt that Daniels had this offense absolutely humming during his rookie campaign, okay? Suddenly, expectations are much higher for them in 2025 now that they've found their guy, right? More weapons have been added to the offense. If you want to call Deebo Samuel a weapon, that is your call. I'm more talking about the Laremy Tunsil. I'm more talking about the key pieces that they focused on protecting Jayden Daniels around, right? The ceiling might as well be the roof for this squad if Daniels manages to take anything close to a year two leap, okay? We always expect, right? We always expect the sophomore slump, right? I'm not so sure that I expect that with Jayden Daniels. But, at the same time, I didn't expect that with C.J. Stroud either. So it'll be interesting to see how this sophomore season really pans out for Jayden Daniels. But what is stopping Jayden Daniels from being the quarterback one of fantasy this year, right? The 2024 NFL Draft second overall pick is fresh off, turning in one of the position's most productive rookie seasons, ever. Okay? The most fantasy points per game from a rookie quarterback in NFL history at a minimum of 8 starts. At number 1, we have Cam Newton at 23 points per game. Justin Herbert as a rookie, 22.2. Robert Griffin, 21.2. And then we have Jayden Daniels, who's just below Robert Griffin at a 20.9. Okay? Yes, Daniels' lethal ability on the ground was a big reason for this, right? His almost 900 rushing yards and 6 scores resulted in a whopping almost 8 fantasy points per game from just strictly rushing production. Okay, a mark which tied Josh Allen and only trailed Anthony Richardson at 7.8 and the king, Jalen Hurts, at 9.8. Okay, 9.8 fantasy points per game just by the ground by your boy. Okay. Also, yes, it was the rising second-year talent's already polished passing ability that should really have fans and fantasy members, our managers alike, excited ahead of next season, right? Daniels posted the same EPA per dropback, okay, points per play, as Joe Burrow, okay? It's quite impressive, guys. Quite impressive. Ultimately, the only players to finish as the fantasy's overall quarterback one since 2018, I apologize, are Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. That's it. Daniel's ability to join this group is contingent on his rushing floor remaining sky high and experiencing a spike in production through the air, something that is certainly possible after posting relatively beatable marks in the passing touchdown rate, right? Yards per attempt was 7.4, ranked 13th last season, okay? Again, sophomore season, we're trying to get that jump. Can he make it? What is Jayden Daniels' fantasy football outlook for 2025, okay? It's tough to rationally rank Daniels ahead of, either Jackson or Allen or Hurts due to their demonstrated superior passing upside, okay? I would say more Josh and Lamar, but I think that Jalen Hurts can take that next step. But I think that the potential for the Commanders quarterback of the present and the future to take a step forward in that department has him at least earned a top 4 quarterback status, okay? Now, if Jalen Hurts cannot figure out the passing game and they remain a run-first offense, we could see Jayden Daniels take that heat into the quarterback 3, okay? Jalen Hurts is just not going to be able to keep up. Those passing yards, those passing touchdowns, they got to come from somewhere. Jalen Hurts has to make that next step. Is Brian Robinson a late-round quarterback? Drafter's delight. Okay, we didn't talk about this guy on Tuesday, but the Commanders were, I think, in my opinion, a popular dark horse player in the running back market during free agency and the draft this offseason. Yet, the only somewhat meaningful addition that wound up making was adding New Mexico-Arizona product Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in the 7th round. Okay, this means to me that Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler are once again poised to lead an offense that racked up the league's fifth most total rushing yards last season. Now, part of that was simply the Commanders' ability to play with plenty of leads. Their drop back over expectation rate, was actually above average. Okay? That could certainly be a reality again in 2025 should Daniels and company manage to build on their success in the run game. Now, for the tricky part, discerning what exactly the rotation could look like for Brian Robinson 2025. We unfortunately don't have the best sample size for this, as the former back missed 3 games last year and was limited in others while dealing with the knee, hamstring, and ankle injuries. And he had to sit out 5 full games stemming from 2 concussions as well. Okay. Robinson is the Thunder, in my opinion, who has the chance to flirt with 15-plus carries when the Commanders can build a lead. Ekeler is the Lightning, who should see more action when Washington is forced in a trailing game script, right? Note that B-Rob easily led the way in carries inside the 5-yard line on the season for the Washington Commanders, not as an NFL whole. I guess I should clarify that. Although the presence of Daniels didn't help matters either, who also ran for 10 of those. Okay, so Rob ran for 11. Daniels ran for 10. It's kind of a Hurts-Saquon situation, but Brian's getting that inside the 5 rushing attack. This variable is the primary issue with being overly excited about either running back ahead of 2025. Okay, obviously Daniels is a baller, but high-volume, dual-threat quarterbacks historically haven't been great for the fantasy success of their running backs due to, 2 reasons. Scrambling more often than they check down and factoring into the rushing equation near the goal line, right? The real path to success for either Robinson or Ekeler comes down to one of them taking over the backfield via injury. While Washington did annoyingly insist on keeping guys like Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez involved when either of their top 2 backs missed time, right? Especially Jeremy Nichols. Both Robinson and Ekeler did post multiple games with a snap count north of 70%. That sort of near every down role could go a long way in the fantasy land upside. An offense that really most expect to be a top 10 scoring unit, right? Jayden Daniels, you got a good running back room. Eckler's getting up there in age, but I believe in Brian Robinson. You got Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz coming back, Debo. Again, if we want to call Debo a weapon, we can do that, but I'm not a believer. Are Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler fantasy targets in 2025? Okay. Robinson and Ekeler profile as poor man's versions of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. A wish version, a T-move version, if you will. An evenly split backfield between running backs used differently, but we don't feel good about the overall offense and have to deal with, a far more mobile quarterback, right? That said, both Commanders running backs have unappreciated handcuff upside if the other goes down, as mentioned before. Making each other more than a solid mid to late round investment on rosters that largely fade the position in the early rounds. Okay. Now we're going to get into the wide receivers. Are Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel capable of putting up big-time fantasy numbers? Okay. Expecting McLaurin to put up big-time numbers shouldn't be a hot take after the 29-year-old veteran posted a career-best wide receiver 14 finish per game last season. Okay, the high-end consistency was truly something to marvel. McLaurin's 11 top 18 finishes surpassed even Justin Jefferson at 10 and Ja'Marr Chase at 10 for the position's best mark. Consistency, guys. We go back to that consistency. Now, the artist known as Scary Terry to most has previously posted wide receiver 29, 20, 30, 23, and 36 finishes, prior. 2024 was admittedly an outlier of sorts, right? Although the reality that it came alongside McLaurin finally experiencing above average quarterback play, right? It lends the idea that the high-end production wasn't a fluke. Okay? I have a little bit tougher time simply writing off Samuel's down campaign as variance. The 2020 version of Samuel simply wasn't on par with what fans are used to seeing, right? Brutal efficiency numbers as both a rusher and a receiver resulted in the least productive season of his career, okay? Of course, some context could help explain why Samuel had struggled so much in 2024. Maybe Father Time has simply came for the typically electric hybrid wide receiver running back, or maybe that calf strain, kind of lingered in September. He also suffered a rib injury during Week 8 against the Cowboys. It was right after he ended up in the hospital with pneumonia, I also believe. I'm not a doctor, but dealing with calf and rib injuries on top of an illness bad enough to require multiple nights spent in a hospital doesn't exactly seem ideal for any person, okay? Samuel averaged 77 total yards per game during his first 5 games of the season before the latter rib and illness issues, compared to just 46 yards per game in his final 9 contests. Okay, his efficiency on target fell down along with his per reception basis. Okay. Overall, Samuel averaged 14 points per game in weeks 1 through 6 last season, and then after the issues compared to 9.4. So he dropped a whole 5 points, guys. He was a wide receiver 54. So I have to see improvement. Again, small sample size, sure. But then again, the latter disappointing stretch also doesn't exactly supersede, the previous 5 years of excellence from the longtime baller. To summarize, Deebo wasn't very good in 2024. Again, I have to see it. After largely doing nothing with the ball, but his early season performance does suggest that perhaps illness and the rib injuries played a bigger role than what we realized, okay? So what is the fantasy outlook for all of the wide receivers and the Commanders? It might be tough for McLaurin to match last season's amazing 13 touchdowns, but he still profiles as the clear-cut number 1 target for one of the league's best young quarterbacks. Let's be honest about it. That alone makes him worthy of a mid-tier wide receiver 2 treatment. Now, while Samuel is more of a borderline wide receiver 3, who fantasy managers are really hoping can hop back on that horse like it's 2023 again. That said, Deebo is just 29 years old, guys, and projects the triple-digit combined carries and targets. There's some 2024 pre-injury Chris Godwin potential here. Should be motivated playmaker managing to rekindle his previous form. So it'd be interesting to see what Deebo Samuel can cook up this year. Will Zach Ertz keep getting away with it? It's a question. Ben Sinnott. Truthers were forced to watch, really the second rounder catch just 5 passes all season long. Last year they drafted another tight end. failing to beat out John Bates on the depth chart, let alone old man Zach Ertz. The 34-year-old veteran is fresh off posting his best numbers since 2021. As he caught 66 passes and 7 touchdowns. It was good enough for tight end 10 status and PPR points per game. Ertz season ending 11 catches on 104 yards, revenge game in the NFC Championship. It made it seem like he had a little bit more gas in the tank. Okay, even more wild was the reality that Ertz actively functioned as Jayden Daniels' number 2 pass game option through the season. Obviously, Scary Terry, which had 117 targets, easily led the way, but Ertz at 91 finished far ahead of Zacchaeus at 64 and Noah Brown at 56. Say what you will about Zach Ertz after the catchability. He did hurdle a man, just saying. But he's consistently managed to demand targets, well, at a high level, even in his later years. Just look at 2023 with the Cardinals, when Ertz managed to post a 23% target per route run, which was ranked 6th in the league, before getting injured and really allowing the way for Trey McBride to come in, right? Now, is Zach Ertz a late-round tight end sleeper? Being 35 next November, Ertz's best football is, well, certainly in the rearview mirror, right? Just realize that he's still good enough to outslow plenty of linebackers around the league, and according to capable of being a younger, more exciting tight end, firmly on the bench, Ben Sinnott. Okay, don't be surprised to see him on the cover of a Week 2 waiver wire article after catching 7 passes and a touchdown in Week 1. Just saying. How much easier does a dual threat quarterback make life for a team's run blocking? Okay. Offense's willingness to utilize the read option has made dual threat quarterbacks more dangerous than ever. Think about a fast quarterback like a deadly three-point shooter in basketball. Defenses need to be aware of where they are all at all moments, right? Their sheer threat of doing something cool accordingly pulls defenders out of the position. To try and measure this, I went ahead and looked at every team's running back yards before contact, okay? I just used career rushing yards per game to get 40 qualified seasons, and the results were as follows. Okay? The average rank in team running back yards per contact, per carry, in our baller dual threat quarterback is 11.4. The median is about 9.5. So 28 out of the 40 qualified seasons, which is 70%, put forward an above average rank. So what's the bottom line here? Well, the bottom line is last year's Commanders ranked 10th. So don't be surprised if Robinson and Ekeler, again, have plenty of space to run. They also have to worry about Daniels taking off, guys. Okay? It just is. Now, what is the Washington Commanders' prediction for 2025? Okay? The expectations for the Commanders are, well, suddenly quite high. And have reflected their 9.5 win total ahead of 2025. I think this is the second highest mark in the NFC East, only behind the Eagles at 11.5. So based on Daniels' ascension and overall roster improvements, I'm taking the over on 9.5. My bold fantasy specific take is that Robinson will score 12 plus total touchdowns on his way to a top 20 finish in points per game. I think Brian Robinson is a guy to draft this year.